He was nicknamed Three-Finger Jack, having lost two of his right fingers in a sledding accident when he was young. On March 16, 1927, he was convicted of the robbery of a gas station in St. Joseph County, Indiana, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. While incarcerated, he befriended a number of prominent bank robbers, such as John Dillinger, Russell Clark, Charles Mackley, Harry Pierpont, and Homer Van Meter. Dillinger was paroled in May 1933, but swore to liberate his friends, and had handguns smuggled into them. On September 26, 1933, a total of 10 armed men, including him, escaped from the main gate of Indiana State Prison. Soon afterwards, the gang learned that Dillinger had in the meantime been arrested for bank robbery and was being detained at the Allen County Jail in Lima, Ohio. Determined to free Dillinger, the gang needed cash to fund an escape. On October 3, 1933, the gang robbed the First National Bank of St. Mary's, Ohio, escaping with $14,000. 9 days later, he accompanied Charles Mackley, Harry Pierpont, Russell Clark, and Ed Schaus to the Lima jail where Dillinger was being held, although he did not enter the building, and did not participate in Mackley and Pierpont's murder of Allen County Sheriff Jess Sarber. On December 13, 1933, the Dillinger Gang executed an armed invasion of a Chicago bank to empty its safe deposit boxes, netting the gang as much as $50,000. A day later, after he had left his car at a Chicago garage for some body work, the garage's mechanic called police with his suspicion that it was a gangster car. When he returned to pick up the car and found a police detective, William Shanley, and two other officers waiting to question him, he opened fire, killing Shanley, and managing to elude capture by the other two officers. This incident led to the Chicago Police Department forming a 40-man Dillinger squad. On January 15, 1934, he and Dillinger robbed the First National Bank in East Chicago, Indiana, for $20,376. During the heist, police officer William O'Malley was shot dead. Dillinger was officially charged with the murder, but several witnesses indicated that he was the shooter. By the end of the year, he found himself ranked third on Indiana's list of public enemies, after Dillinger and Harry Pierpont. He was shot twice during the East Chicago robbery, was left in the care of his girlfriend Pat Charrington and underworld physician Joseph Moran, while Dillinger and the others headed to Tucson where they were apprehended by the authorities. After this incident, for a short time, he was at the top of the public enemies list, until Dillinger managed to escape from Crown Point and mustered a new gang that consisted of him, Homer Van Meter, Tommy Carroll, Eddie Green, and Babyface Nelson. He subsequently accompanied the gang on a string of lucrative, but chaotic armed robberies. On March 6, 3 days after Dillinger's escape, the gang robbed the Security National Bank and Trust Company in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. In the robbery, a motorcycle cop named Hale Keith was severely wounded when Nelson shot him down through a plate glass window. A week later, the gang robbed the First National Bank in Mason City, Iowa. He was wounded yet again, shot in the shoulder by an elderly judge across the street, who also managed to wound Dillinger. Now the subjects of a massive manhunt and media campaign, he and Dillinger made a discreet visit to his sister's home in Michigan on April 17th. After returning to Chicago, the gang retreated to the Little Bohemia Resort near Rhinelander, Wisconsin. On April 22nd, the place was raided by the FBI under the direction of Melvin Purvis, who had received a tip about the gang's whereabouts from Henry Voss, a friend of Emil Wanaka, Little Bohemia's owner. Unfortunately, the raid did not go as planned. The agents mistakenly opened fire on a car that contained 3 local work camp employees, after thinking they were gangsters. One was killed and other 2 were both wounded. Dillinger, Van Meter, Tommy Carroll, and him escaped by jumping from a second-floor window in the back of the lodge onto a mound of frozen snow, then running along the shore of Star Lake. They eventually stole a car from a carpenter a half-mile northwest of Little Bohemia. A day later, on April 23rd, they were again confronted by authorities in Hastings, Minnesota, and another shootout ensued. He was mortally wounded by a bullet as he and the rest of the gang escaped in a car. The gang again took him to see Dr. Joseph Moran in Chicago. For some reason, Moran refused to treat him. Dillinger then hit him with Volney Davis and Edna Murray in Aurora, Illinois. He was reportedly died on April 26, 1934. Dillinger and Davis buried their friend near Oswego, Illinois, and Dillinger reportedly covered his face and hands with lye to hinder any later attempt to identify the body. Not yet knowing that he had died almost 3 weeks prior, authorities indicted him on May 19 of harboring fugitives. His sister was convicted of the same charge and spent a short time in prison. There were at the time several persistent rumors that he was actually still alive. The FBI received numerous tips from people claiming to have seen or heard from him. Even his nephew maintained that he had personally visited his uncle in Ontario after his supposed death. Nevertheless, no hard evidence for his survival has ever been discovered. The amalgam restorations on the teeth of the body identified by Davis and Murray were compared with his dental records from Indiana State Penitentiary and were matched. John Red Hamilton was a Canadian criminal and bank robber active in the 1920s, 1930s.